Well, welcome back to See Hear Love as we reveal our number 4 top YouTube show of all time, episode number 174, Living with Anorexia and Bulimia. Now, this show is one of the most courageous, emotional, and brave shows that I have ever hosted. And I was joined by a panel of guests who struggle with eating disorders. Nikki Fletcher, mom of 2 who struggles with anorexia. Jermaine Downey, retired Army captain who struggles with bulimia. Shannon Binkley, a teacher who struggles with anorexia. And Trish Nicholls-Powell, our former guesting producer, who struggled with anorexia and bulimia for 20 plus years and told me that I needed to do a show on this very topic. And so I listened to their very personal journeys with eating disorders. I learned what not to do or say to someone with an eating disorder. And I learned effective and kind ways to be supportive to someone with an eating disorder. And I know after watching and listening to this show, you will learn a lot too. Now, just a note before we get to the show. This program includes discussion of disordered eating, so viewers and listeners that are struggling with these topics may want to be cautious in joining this conversation. So without further ado, here's our number 4 top YouTube show of all time, Living with Anorexia and Bulimia. Well, welcome to See Hear Love. I'm your host, Melinda, and today we'll be hearing stories from everyday people, your neighbor, your mom, your colleague, your brother, who are struggling with an eating disorder. Well, I want to give you some quick info on what an eating disorder is and its impact if you don't know. An eating disorder is an illness which changes the way people think, feel, and act about eating habits. And there are 4 main kinds of eating disorders: anorexia nervosa, bulimia, also there is binge eating disorder, and orthorexia. You can find all the definitions on our website at seehearlove.com. But here's something I found fascinating, and then I'm going to introduce these amazing people beside me. Approximately 1 million Canadians meet the diagnostic criteria for an eating disorder, 1 million Canadians. In the United States, it's an estimated 30 million Americans suffer from an eating disorder. That's almost the population of Canada. And 1 in 10 people living with an eating disorder receive treatment. Well, thankfully, my special guests are one of the 10 who sought treatment for their eating disorder and are here to tell their stories. So welcome all of you, and I want to get right into introduction. So I have Jermaine Downey. You're a retired Army captain, and you've been struggling with bulimia.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate that. We have Shannon Binkley. You are a grade 3 teacher, and you've been struggling with anorexia.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Shannon, for being here as well.
Thank you.
Nikki Fletcher. You're a mom of 2 little kids, and you've been struggling with anorexia.
Yes.
Yeah. And Trish Powell, which this is really special because actually Trish works for See Hear Love, and this show came out of conversations that we've had. Trish Powell, you're a mom of 4 boys, and you have struggled with anorexia and bulimia.
I have.
Wow, so thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. Now, those numbers that I gave you, the 1 million Canadians, the 30 million Americans, that eating disorders are the number 1 sort of killer in mental illness. What do you think of those numbers? I mean, what does that mean to you? Why do you think the numbers are so high? What are your thoughts?
I think honestly the hardest part is when you're kind of in the midst of it, you don't really see how bad things actually are. So when a lot of people that aren't aware, even that they might be struggling, they think like, oh, I'm still this size, I'm still doing this, I've still got this, I'm fine. Mm-hmm. So that number is just so I think directed by the fact that, there's so much surrounding it that people don't fully understand.
Mm-hmm. Jermaine, what about you?
You're treading water, your life is going on. You feel like you're in control, but really, to the rest of people, you're out of control.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're drowning.
Yeah.
Shannon, what about you?
I think it's outstanding that there's that many people and there's not a lot of support or anyone to help you through it. So that's why I think the numbers are so big, is that there's lack of help for us, for those people.
Wow.
And our standards are so high too, right? In media and culture. I mean, you look at Instagram and the number of people you see, there's just so many images every day that you're like, I want to live like that, I want to be like that. So 1 million Canadians, 30 million Americans, I'm not surprised.
Right. I want to ask this at the top of the show, because a lot of people think that an eating disorder is just about food. Yeah. And immediately you go, but I'm just saying for someone, and again, I'm in a listening and learning posture here, but talk about that. before we get into the story, because I think we need to dispel that myth that it's about food. What is it about?
It's a mental battle, for sure.
It's a control thing, I think.
Absolutely.
Like you lose control of one area in your life, and like when you lose control of that, it's just like everything else spirals, and then it's just, you kind of come to a point where you're like, whoa, like how did it get this bad? And so I think that's too, like,
Right.
part of it.
Definitely control, though.
Yeah.
I mean, even though you're not really in control, right?
No.
But it's like, this is, I will control everything. It's not even about food. It's just trying to circumstances. You're trying to control your circumstances.
It's the one
So
thing you can control.
Food is the one thing.
The one thing is food is the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Food is
yeah.
the vehicle, I believe, that is used as the controlling factor.
Right.
That's,
smart.
that
What,
is, wow.
Go a little deeper in that. What do you mean?
Food is the one thing that you have control of. You can control the rest of your world with food. So with that being said, you can binge it, you can purge it. And the rest of your world is so out of control. Food is the one thing that you have complete control of, and your body.
Right.
So you can fluctuate your weight and control that with food. And also, it's not just about food. Like you said, there's so many other things that go with it. One of my symptoms was excessive exercise. I ran almost 2 marathons a week when I was in the Army,
Wow.
to and from work. I lived in Halifax, and I ran to Shearwater every morning. You know? So, I mean, that was just, you know, because I could control that.
It's control. So
That
it's
was
not
control.
about food.
It's not about
It's
food.
about control.
It's about control.
Wow. Wow. So, Nikki, let's start with you. How did your eating disorder begin, and what has your journey looked like to today?
I've actually always taken pride in the fact that I've been, growing up especially, like I was always thick and confident, you know, like I'm very tall, I carried my weight well, I was always kind of the heavier friend, and it never fazed me, truthfully, until I became a mom in 2015, and I was hit by the postpartum depression train. And I had so much in my life. My life was always very firm. I've got a great relationship with my family. I'm very blessed in that regards. And I started just really not feeling like myself, and instead of not eating, you know, I did the opposite. I was eating like crazy. So I gained a ton of weight. At my heaviest, I was sitting at close to 300 pounds. And but I was happy, truthfully, I was very happy. And so then I never really thought too much about it. But then all of a sudden the voices of people around me just really started to become suffocating. And then so I said,
What were they saying?
Just stuff like, oh, you were thinner when you were pregnant. You know, if you would just eat like this, if you would just do this and exercise, like you would be beautiful. And that was the insult that just like really struck me, because it's like, okay, if I'm not beautiful at this, you know, what can I do? So then it became, you know, I lost the first 50 pounds really healthily. I took really good care of myself, and then all of a sudden you get to that goal weight and I couldn't stop. I just kept going, and then, you know, it became, oh no, she's sick. There was never anything in between. It was just always this, it was almost constantly just shoved in my face.
Yeah.
And so it became denial. Like, I'm not actually that bad. I'm not actually doing this. I'm not actually blah, 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 blah. All while trying to mom. And I think the hardest thing I've ever had to do was keep myself together for my son.
Right.
And I felt so guilty all the time, like, why am I getting worse when I should be getting better? Because I've got this beautiful little boy who I love more than anything in the entire world, and here I am suffering, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And unfortunately, I was put on some medication in hopes to help me. I saw the wrong doctor, and just things went.
Wow.
And altogether, I had lost, I think, close to 150 pounds within the year. And it got to the point where doctors were like physically begging me to seek that treatment. But I didn't want it, because for the first time, I was the skinny friend. I was the beautiful friend. I had finally hit that mark of, you know, society standards of beautiful.
Right.
And that's where I wanted to stay. And it just became this battle between me and the scale every single day. Like, I would get up right when my feet would hit the floor, I'm weighing myself. Okay, so I have put on half a pound. Okay, well then, you know what? That 500 calories that we were eating a day, that's now 150.
Were people noticing the change, and then what led you to getting help and treatment?
So I have been blessed with a husband who sees me for who I am and just furiously loves me for it. And I have been so blessed. At my highest weight, he never once, in the worst of the worst, never once looked at me and was like, and he would be the person that you would expect to have an opinion on that. But no, you know what? He was very encouraging and he loved me through it. And he sat me down actually, and he goes, Nicole, like, I can't watch this anymore. It kicked me right into treatment, and God has had such a crazy hand even in this experience too. And I look back and so bitter at him, thinking, you point the blame game, and when you're hurting, you're hurting. And I think the other thing too is that people think like when you're in the midst of an eating disorder, you don't realize the tornado that you've become. You don't realize the destruction that you've left.
You're all like this.
Everybody's like,
a tornado.
Absolutely resonates.
And it's the hardest thing to watch because all of a sudden you're walking and everything is going by so fast around you, and then you stop and you turn around and you're like,
whoa,
what happened?
Did I create that mess?
Is this me? Is this me?
How long were you in treatment for?
You know what? God knew where I needed to be in that moment, and he, instead of putting me in that treatment, God really just grabbed me by the head, and he goes, not only am I going to give you the blessing of a life, I'm going to give you a daughter. So when you look at that daughter every single day, you look in those eyes and you want to be a better example. You want to love yourself so she learns to love herself, because if I have to watch my daughter go through what I know my mom has watched me go through, like that makes me feel ill, just because it was really hard for everyone, like really hard.
Thank you. We're going to get back and circle around, but thank you for that. And the gift of your children is such a gift. In a bigger way than you could have known.
Anything and everything.
And your husband.
Yes.
To be that. I love that. He furiously loves you.
Furiously, unconditionally.
I love that. And I think that's going to be part of, at the end of the show, when we talk about what can we do. So thank you. Absolutely. Thank you, Nikki. Jermaine, what about you? Your story, what it's been like to be a man with a complex eating disorder with bulimia. What has that been like for you in your journey?
In short of a long. In short of a long story, had a career in the military for 21 years, but it became a way of coping with stress, the life in the military. And of course, if you understand the military way of life, your whole appearance, you're judged by that. Your competence is judged by that, the way you look. So everywhere you go as an officer, your leadership ability depends on how you look. I openly heard people look at, other officers if they were overweight, whether they're competent or not, just because of how they looked.
So just judged by
They just judged, he's sloppy or what have you, So that put more pressure on you as an officer to basically look sharp and look well and look physically fit. So I got into running excessively. The purging and the binging was through the roof. My whole life was a mudslide. I would say that for me as a man, it was very hard to come out and to disclose that I had an eating disorder. And I remember going into groups and I was the only male and being scared. And you know what? Y'all share the same story. I have many sisters, I like to call, when I went into to group. So went into treatment in 2007, relapsed, went into treatment again in 2016, relapsed. So God looked at me and he said, you're not getting it. Maybe I need to show you something to get it. So I went into the hospital with chronic pancreatitis, and that was a near-death experience for me.
Okay.
So I almost died at that point. And that's when I really kind of clued in. It's like, you need to wake up.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here.
I'm here.
Yes, you are here. Shannon, your story, how it all began.
Where do you start?
I know. But you've been like this with everybody, like
yes. I was always the small kid, like short in height, thin as ever, could eat what you want, nothing mattered. So I never really grew up being self-conscious or like had body issues. So this kind of, to me, came out of nowhere. I was 24 when I was diagnosed. I was struggling to find a teaching job, which was my forever passion goal in life. Just working at daycare with 19 girls that were all very avid into the gym. So I've never thought I was big, but I definitely had body issues around like my stomach and stuff. So I was like, oh, I'll just go to the gym. I feel pressure from everybody else. And, again, back to the control, like I wasn't getting the job I wanted. So what can I work on to kind of make me feel better about it? So I went to the gym, and just one day after, you start hearing the comments of, you're looking really good, you're looking really good, and you never thought you never didn't look good. Not that I ever felt good enough for anybody as it was, which kind of led into this. Something clicked in my head, and it was just over excessive exercise, cutting out a bunch of food groups, cutting out a bunch of everything basically to just minimize the calories. I would go and I would burn 1,000 calories on the treadmill and eat 500 in a day, because why would I eat over what I've burnt, right? To gain it. Yeah, exactly. Heck no. So, and it just, like I said, it clicked and it spiraled, and I just lost control from there, and I ended up in the hospital on a feeding tube for 2 months straight, because I was pretty much, the size of a 5-year-old, and I couldn't walk, talk, I couldn't do anything on my own anymore. So, and then I went into treatment after that, and when I was transitioning from the hospital into treatment, God kind of heard my prayers, and I got hired by the school board. So,
Wow.
yeah, I actually had
Wow.
I had my interview, and I was deathly sick. I don't remember it whatsoever. How I got hired, I will never know. But yeah, I found out the night I went into the hospital, actually, and then I was off the wait list as I was transferring into my treatment. So,
How are you doing now? How are you doing today?
well, when I left the program, I remember the doctor said to me, "You were one of the worst cases, and I will guarantee you will relapse." And I said, "I will prove you wrong." So I have
Good for you.
Wow.
definitely
Good
stuck
for
to
you.
that.
Oh, that's a
Yes.
high five, girl.
So,
That's good. That's awesome.
Definitely a battle mentally
Yes.
every day. Always body issues, still very regimented around my food and what I eat. Definitely want to eat really healthy to watch that weight. I don't want to get over certain numbers still, which is a struggle for me and people that, are in my family and stuff. But it's getting better every day. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And it's so good. It's like every one of you here is just like a miracle of kind of God saying, I'm going to do it, where near-death experience, baby, job, and everything else, and just seeing your life, it's pretty...
Well, yeah, the doctor said if you didn't come in tonight, you wouldn't have lived to see the next day. So
Thank you,
Yeah.
Shannon.
Good for
Great,
you.
good. Trish, your story.
How do you sum it up?
Right. Your story, how it started. And, yeah.
No, I think it was kind of the typical, really good childhood, and getting into high school. I was at an all-girls private school. A lot of pressure there. A lot of pressure academically, physically. It was, you always have to be more, and which meant you're not good enough. So that's kind of the voice
that's what they kept saying to me all the time.
right?
Oh yeah.
And it's like I would never let anyone else talk that way, but to themselves. Don't
That's actually so true.
Right?
Yeah.
True.
That's
Yeah.
very true.
Very true.
But it's
that you would never let anyone else
No.
talk to you that way, but you...
No, like let them
What are you
talk about
saying?
themselves.
Talk
Yeah.
themselves
Yeah.
that way.
like if
Okay.
you were
Yeah.
saying that, I'd be like,
No,
that's
don't.
not true.
That's
Don't
not
talk
true.
like
Yeah.
that.
We basically bully ourselves.
Yeah.
That's basically what
You
it is.
bully yourselves.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
We are our own
But we
worst
wouldn't
enemies.
allow that to
for
happen to
sure.
anybody else.
So if you saw
Yeah.
your daughter or your son
Oh no.
I'd
and
smack
someone
them.
talking like that, or him
No.
saying that about
Yeah.
himself, you would say no.
No.
But somehow you...
But for
We do it to
ourselves,
ourselves all the
oh
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same thing. I'm sure we all went into treatment, and we all thought we didn't belong there. We weren't, oh, I am not thin enough. I'm not sick enough. So I did go into treatment in my late teens, and got my way kind of, I was smart enough to get around everything and did what I was supposed to. So I had 4 boys, and over the 10 years that I had them, I was kind of in and out and in and out. I'd lose enough weight just to get the voice out of my head, but then gain enough to get everyone off my back. So you don't really tackle it. I would say the biggest thing that changed was at 38. I just realized I have been battling this for over 20 years, 22 years.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, I thought I've always got a handle on it, but do I really? And do I want to be 40? Do I want to be 50? Do I want to be 60 still dealing with this? And it just clicked. I went into treatment. I learned to eat, to refuel my body, and I learned it's okay to not be enough, right? Some days are bad, some days are good.
Yep.
So I came out of there pretty healthy. It's been 3 years, It's hard. You know, I kept trying to get out of this show because I'm like, you know, it's it's a great topic, Mel, but I really don't want to do it. Yeah. It's hard because I'm not anywhere where I would love to be, right? You want me to go on the show? Sure, but let me lose 25 pounds, right? Like, let me just, you know, that's all I need. Yeah. So it never really goes away.
So it never really goes away. So the struggle is always there, and it's always
real.
The struggle is real. It's always top of mind.
Yeah.
And it's a control issue, a mental issue, not a food issue.
Not a food issue.
I'm
hearing
going,
control.
This camera's adding 10 more pounds.
Yeah. So you're continually thinking that, right? Yeah. But what I'm astounded about, and we have to throw into a break, but what I'm astounded about is this amazing way God kind of reached into the place that you needed to be spoken into, right? A doctor literally saying you're going to be back, and you're like, I'm going to prove you wrong. Yeah. You're almost dying, again, baby, and for you to say, well, wait a second, I don't want to be 50, 60, 80 still battling this, and I have kids.
When does it stop?
Right, when does it stop?
When is enough?
And when is enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. You know, wow, we could do this for hours because I want to learn so much. Well, when we come back, we're going to be talking about the best advice that Jermaine, Shannon, Nikki, and Trish are going to give me on how to support those or my friend who is struggling with an eating disorder.
2 years ago, my family took a summer trip to one of our most favorite places on earth. Not anywhere tropical, believe it or not, Montreal. It's one of our favorite spots. The architecture, the history, the arts, it just feeds the creatives and the artists in my family, and we love it. It's a little piece of heaven. Well, we were there. Our first stop was the gallery, my daughter's favorite, and she stumbled upon a painting that took her breath away. And she called me over all excited, and I stood behind her, and she said, Mom, look at this thing. It's unbelievable. The colors, the depth. It's like it's leaping off the canvas. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. I struggled to, you know, get as excited as she was, and I couldn't see what she was seeing, and she was describing it with such excitement and such clarity. And then she turned over, quite frustrated with me because, you know, we're not on the same page artistically, and she said, Mom, take your glasses off. Well, I had my sunglasses on. I took my sunglasses off, and you know what happened? That picture leapt off the canvas. The colors were brilliant. The depth was there. And you know, it made me realize that so many of us are like that moment. We struggle to see the beauty in ourselves. And like the sunglasses, there are many things that hinder the lens in which we see ourselves. For some, it's trauma. For some, it's pain. For some, it's low self-esteem, low self-worth, anxiety, or mental illness. But the only true lens that we need is the Bible. And that is where we get our identity from. Psalm 139, 14, 17 says this, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast are the sum of them. Does your soul know it well? And if you don't, I just pray that you know that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And that fearful means reverent. It's a holy awe. God was in awe of you when he made you wonderfully. You, like that painting, are a masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Cheryl, for that beautiful reminder that we are made and loved immensely by God. Well, let's finish our show by you helping me, giving me advice to someone who, you know, does not have an eating disorder, but, you know, is in the company of those that do. What advice would you give me on helping you and helping them today? What would you say? What not to do, what to do, things to stay away from. Go for it. You have the floor.
What not to do.
This is your time. Jermaine is like, I'm ready. You go, tell me. Tell me.
One thing I would do, you know, is to police their eating.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is the main thing, is to allow them to discover themselves.
Okay.
And you be a support more than a food police.
But
Right?
it's like you just want to because you're like watching
know.
and saying,
It's-
eat more of this and eat more of that. But
Yeah.
don't do that, you're
Don't
saying.
do that.
Do not police their food.
Be a support.
Be a
Be an
support.
ear.
Be an ear. Okay.
And don't say eat more.
Yeah.
That is
Never
like
say
the
eat more.
worst.
Just
yeah.
eat.
Just eat.
Just
Yeah.
eat. Like, why can't you
Okay.
just,
Why can't you
exactly,
just
it's
eat?
not that hard.
Why can't you just eat?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just,
So don't police food. Don't say just eat. What would you
Yep.
say, Shannon?
I would say like when they're ready, they're ready. Like my biggest thing was like being pushed just set me more over the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to know yourself when you're ready to get that treatment or when you're ready to get better. You know, I get it, like on the support end, you know, you don't want to see someone struggling and stuff, but you're just pushing and making them angrier more.
So what do we do? Like if I do see that and I'm like really concerned, do you want me not to say anything?
No, but
a
say it. Yeah, but say it with concern.
Yeah.
You know, and no, we say no judgment, but there still is judgment, right? Because really, it's something wrong with us. You're trying to say something's wrong with us. So
Which we're already internalizing.
which we already know we're
Yeah.
our own worst critic. So
you see, judgment comes out in your question too, right?
yes,
You have to form your question so that you're not judging the person within your question.
Okay.
So you have to really think about how you question.
Okay, so be thoughtful and intentional about how we talk. and what we say.
Absolutely.
And like, don't get us wrong. Like, we know we're frustrating. Like, we know that we are hard
We
to
are?
deal. Yeah. Sorry, speaking for myself, I know But like, even in the worst of the worst, like we don't. Half the time we're living like this. The only thing that we can see is the mirror and the scale and what we're not and like what we need to do to get there. So realistically, like sometimes the best thing that, you know, you can do for someone in our shoes is just like love us through it. Like remind us that we're not alone through it. Remind us that we're, you know, we're worth the treatment. We're worth getting, you know, better. We're worth that
and they're here.
for us through
Right.
it.
Yeah.
We have so much to talk about. We have our after the show thoughts, and I know that there's going to be some blogs that are going to be written, and I have just learned a lot. Not only about what you've said, but just your presence and being here, for choosing to be here on the show, to put yourself out there, and to help other people around the world. Like, really, thank you. It takes a lot of courage and bravery, and I'm completely honored that you are here on the show. So thank you so much. Wow, I learned a lot throughout this show, and I was deeply honored that Nikki, Jermaine, Shannon, and Trish chose to be here on See Hear Love, to put themselves and their stories out so that people would be helped with their eating disorders all around the world. This was also a very personal show for me, as I have a very close friend who has and is struggling with an eating disorder, and it's been a tough and challenging journey together, but I've seen her recover and live out hope too, and I know that you will as well. Oh, these were your thoughts about this show. This one's from Savannah. This is what she said. This is a really great interview. I am not religious, but I still was able to connect with this on so many levels, especially the when does it stop, and when they spoke about how they would never let someone else talk about themselves this way. So why do we do it to ourselves? Thank you so much, Savannah. And if you're struggling with an eating disorder, we have friends that you can talk to who will pray for you and who will share important and helpful resources with you. All you need to do is call this number, 1-866-273-4444. And there will be someone for you to listen and pray 24/7. You can also visit nedic.ca or nationaleatingdisorders.org. And I hope these words will resonate with you more than ever today. That you are seen, you are heard, and that you are deeply loved by God. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week for the start of our top 3 podcast interviews of all time. You won't want to miss this new series. Bye-bye.
Season 8 is all about getting to know you, the See Hear Love community. Here are 4 ways to connect. Number 1, watch See Hear Love anytime and anywhere on YouTube and Castle Media. Number 2, listen to the See Hear Love podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Number 3, engage by visiting seehearlove.com, or my personal favorite, follow at See Hear Love on Instagram. Finally, number 4, give to See Hear Love and Crossroads by visiting seehearlove.com/give.
See Hear Love thanks our partners who make this show possible.
Thank you for your ongoing support of Crossroads, a supporter-funded, nonprofit organization and member of the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities. Thanks to faithful people like you, we are able to continue producing See Hear Love. You can write to Crossroads, P.O. Box 5100, Burlington, Ontario, L7R 4M2, or visit crossroads.ca to learn more about our programs.